now.
Welcome to the Magento podcast. If you're here for the nth time, we love and appreciate you. Sorry we've been away for a little while. I'm sure you missed us, and we miss you too. And if you celebrate Easter, happy Easter. Um,
Happy Easter.
so Steve T has some jelly bellies
Yes.
from the festivities of the day. Can you tell us about how you how you stumbled upon these jelly bellies, sir?
This was actually a tradition in my family is to have a jelly bean trail from the kids' room to their basket somewhere. With
Oh,
and the Easter basket contains like other candy.
oh wow.
So they wake up, they're like, what is this trail of beans? And it leads them to a basket of other candy.
Wow, wow, wow. You wanna
And
do you wanna adopt me?
yeah, sure. And
I had
these
nothing. I
actually
woke
were
up to
all over
nothing.
our floor, and now I'm eating them. That's, that's
There's nothing wrong with that, you know.
yeah,
Perfectly
yeah.
fine.
Actually, you know what is wrong with it is that I don't have the guide for these jelly beans, and you never know what you might get with a jelly belly. It's not like a normal jelly bean.
A guide.
Yeah, because there's like 50 different flavors,
Uh-huh.
and so you might get like I don't know. Some of them are just weird. Like, and I'm not a fan of all of them, so I just don't know what I'm about to bite into.
It's it's a surprise. Surprises can be good.
I also have these pop rocks, but I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna eat them here.
Pop
Like,
rocks. I can barely see. Is that the little like stick thing that
no, it's just like you just dump them into your mouth and they make like a popping sound.
uh
They
yeah.
demonstrate.
Sure. I was in Costco the other day in the candy section. I was just like, we need to get out of here ASAP. Wow. Wow. You're
Pretty
rocking the
awesome.
pops, man.
Popping it. Pop, pop and lock.
Exactly.
So today's episode is deployment modes,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
I will share my screen because TB doesn't have his local environment set up. Is that right,
You
Stevie?
didn't. Well, I have local environments set up, but I cannot share them because they have confidential information on them.
That's totally fine because we set one up on the very last episode.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get the pop rocks out of my brain for 1 second here and do this. Then you should see the screen with the Magento uh, it says code compiler on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
I
Yeah, so I
can
mean,
see it.
do you want to go over deployment modes first, or how do you want to talk about deployment modes? How would you describe them to someone?
Um. Huh. I guess deployment modes would be um different. I'm trying to avoid the word mode. So different
Phases
states.
of being. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So your app itself can be in different states that Magento has given us access to that will allow you to work on it more efficiently depending on your requirements, right? So I mean, sometimes we're developing stuff on our local machines, so we kind of want a little bit more access to debugging information, and then in production, the priority is a little bit different. Uh, so we want to hide debugging information for security purposes. We also want to optimize for performance. And yeah, and there's like two other modes. You want me to cover those, or you want us to just
No, no.
dabble?
Yeah, so then there's production and default, right? Did you cover developer?
I covered developer and production.
Is it development? Oh no, developer. Okay.
Developer, yeah.
And then there's just default.
Default and so maintenance
Oh,
technically constitutes as a mode, which
yeah.
is the mode in which Magento is under maintenance, and it just tells you get out of here, man. We're we're working here, and we're trying to give you a better experience, and just give us some time, and some new features will be on here when you come back.
Yeah, actually, an interesting thing about maintenance mode is if you have a multi-store setup with different brands,
Mm-hmm.
it's not intuitive or easy to set up different maintenance modes for each store. Like if you put your store in maintenance mode, there's pretty much one page that's going to show.
Yeah,
So, I
yeah,
mean, you can customize it and you can do certain things with like JavaScript to be like, oh, which domain is it, and theme it based on that. But there's not like, as far as I know right now, an easy way to say like, oh, this store's maintenance page is this 500 and there's a different one for different ones. We can show in here. I think it's,
you know what direction I thought you were gonna go with that? Like I thought you were gonna say in a multi-store environment, you can't set maintenance for one particular store,
oh, that's true too.
and then I have another one available. And I guess maybe there's good reason because it's kind of hard to separate at least the back end code for each store, right? And like there'd have to be a lot of like, okay, this theme only applies to this store in order, and like make sure you only work on X module because that impacts only this store. Yeah, so it'd be tough to implement that. But for that kind of sparked that thought in my head. What if I don't want all my stores to go down? Is there a
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think honestly, I don't think there's
Yeah, I don't
an
think there's an
option.
option for that. It's super convoluted to implement something like that. I would just by thinking about it right now.
Okay, so the maintenance page we probably should talk about is under. Where's the directory? I know there's. I know
So
there's a
honestly, I
place.
have never made any changes to the maintenance page, so I cannot help in this case.
I'm in here. Just do this. Uh, yeah, pub/errors. That's where it lives. So if you go to pub and then errors, you'll see default, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you have your 503, which is your maintenance page.
Ooh.
Um, and then let's see what else. Oh yeah, this is like the wrapper. So this is actually where you would do your like styling and stuff for your maintenance page, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
see it includes that whatever it's going to be inside of it. Um, and then like what you would think, right, is right in here, I could just copy this default directory and name it like my theme's name, let's say, or whatever, and then
Yeah.
have inside of it my different ones, but that doesn't work, unfortunately. And it could be that 2.4 fixed that. I don't know. I'm not a 2.4 expert yet, but just so you know, if anybody's dealing with a multi-store, that doesn't exist yet. Maybe it would be awesome if we created it, right? Or you know,
See,
that's
the thing is, it's I know you're so Magento. We're looking at the Magento Cloud docs, right? And you can implement maintenance pages through Fastly. That'll probably be a simpler solution if we can't do it on within Magento itself, because then we could do it based off of the domain. If someone requests a certain URL, then we would respond with a certain maintenance page. I know for Magento Cloud, the maintenance page is implemented on the CDN level and on the app level. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, going through the CDN we could, like if you use Varnish or something like that, or Fastly or whatever Cloudflare, you could probably implement custom maintenance pages that way. If you
Oh,
don't have those enabled, then you're out of luck. But I
interesting.
just a quick, just a just a brainstorming here.
Yeah. I like that. So you're saying you could do it like at the CDN level,
Exactly.
but how do
Um,
you tell your CDN that the store is like offline?
that it's offline.
Yeah, it's in maintenance mode. How do you have like go into Fastly and click a button or something?
So I mean, you can set up Fastly rules, for anything. I guess you'd have to just enable a particular rule when you want to go into maintenance mode. So if a request matches X criteria, so if I'm trying to access this URL and it matches the I don't know, www.site1.com,
Yeah,
return return this page, right? So it would just be turning on a certain Fastly rule. And as long as Fastly or Varnish or whatever you have enabled is turned on, there's no way to really access the site because it sits in front of the app, right? Um,
yeah. And I mean that's kind of the route I've taken, but with JavaScript. So
uh-huh.
like, I'll deliver the same maintenance page to however many brands or whatever are contained in the multi-site, but then I use the JavaScript to say like, hey, which domain am I on? And then
Mm-hmm.
I'll set a couple of variables or whatever, like story name and some colors and a logo. That
Yeah,
way it looks basically the same, and hopefully people don't see it for very long anyway, but
exactly.
it's sort of branded while it's offline. A good rabbit hole to go down, Stevie. Very interesting. Maintenance mode, sir.
Yeah, yeah,
Maintenance mode.
yeah. Like the this kind of went in a completely different direction for a minute there.
Hey man, that's
Like,
Magentleman.
the thing is, it's like I would think maintenance mode would be the least interesting mode, and we just spent we just spent a decent amount of time talking about it. I thought we were just gonna be like, oh, maintenance mode, you're in maintenance. Bye bye. Let's go to the more interesting stuff.
Yeah. No, and so I mean the more interesting stuff to me, like as far as modes, like if I'm the way I think of things sort of is like if I'm interviewing someone and I ask them about maintenance or not maintenance, developer modes, the big thing as a front end developer, I know this is probably different for you, but the thing I want to hear about that basically means this person knows about working it, like this person has worked in Magento as a front end developer, is they have to tell me the word. Can you guess the word that I want to hear? The thing that I need to know.
Symlinks.
Symlinks. Yes, that's what it is. Because that's the big difference. Like if you're in developer mode, you can see here I have one. You can see like this file isn't an actual file. It points over here to, in this case, the vendor folder. And
Yeah.
this one, theme.js, it's not, it doesn't actually live, in this folder. It's just a pointer to a different file. So that, when you're working in developer mode, you'll see though, there are some things. So like if I go to pub/static/front end, CSS, these CSS files here are not symlinks, even though I'm in developer mode. So you can see like other stuff. There's this little arrow in the top right. That means is a symlink in PHP Storm. So arrow in the top right, it's a symlink. If it's just like this, just some file, it's just some file. And that the reason that is because these two files are actually generated by Grunt or Gulp. So you have your local development, and you'll be in like where is it? App design front end. Oh, no. Yeah, well, you'll have your custom theme here. Or like I could go into the Luma folder since I don't have a theme here. But then I'll do some modification, let's say to some CSS file or a less file. And the way it works as a front end developer is um, I then compile the CSS on my local and it spits it over here into this folder. So it'll go through any changes I made, plus all the normal stuff from the regular theme that I'm in and the parent themes. And Grunt is what's called a build tool. So front end developers, it only runs on your local environment and it goes ahead and generates these two files, or maybe three, print, styles L and styles M. Um, this step happens during static content deploy also. So that would be on the production mode side. In the case of like while I'm developing as a front end developer, it's either Grunt or Gulp that does it. But during static content deploy, it's PHP that does it. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, that's the big thing about deployment modes. I found and you said a bunch of the other ones, right? So you said like in developer mode, your errors are written to the screen, whereas in production mode, or I think production mode,
Yeah.
they're written to a log.
Yeah.
So you have to like log in and look at the log. But also, one of the things that you can do, and maybe you should do, I'm not totally sure, is in production mode, you could set your whole file system to read only. So
Yeah.
maybe pub is totally read only because nothing is supposed to write into there, right?
Exactly. So in Magento Cloud, stuff inside of the pub folder isn't read only, but everything else is. Yeah. So anything inside of app code, app design, all of that is read only. The only way to change it is during a deployment. But you can change stuff inside of pub. So like pub media, so you can delete images and stuff like that very easily from the server. But yeah, production mode does have some benefits. The one mysterious or the one that people tend to not understand as well is default mode, right? And it's basically what Magento comes with out of the box. And like the if you look at the docs, it doesn't really give a clear explanation what's the difference between production and default. It only says that default mode is good for a single server setup versus production mode, which is optimized more for production. But I'm like, okay, doesn't that mean that default mode is good for production also, but just when your production environment is just a single server? Anyway.
Yeah, no, I from what I've gathered of default mode, it was originally intended as like a way to set up a quick example site.
Mm-hmm.
And that yeah, I mean, okay, I have a couple of notes about it here. Errors are logged to the file reports at the server and are never shown to the user. So in that way, I guess it's like
Similar production, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But then it says static view files can be created by request. For example, they are not in the cache. Oh, if they're not in the cache, they're then created. So
that's kind of like developer mode.
Yeah.
Because in production mode, static files aren't created on the fly. You have to always run static content deploy.
Yes, in production mode, static view files are deployed once and are served from cache only.
Yep.
New or updated files are not written to the file system. Every time a file is requested, it is received from the cache.
Yep. Do you know what the difference between the difference I found between the default mode and developer mode is when it comes to static content.
Really?
And
No, I don't know.
so in default mode, static files are created on the fly, just like in developer mode. The difference is in developer mode, they're not cached. In default mode, they are. So created on the fly in both cases. In one case, in developer mode, they're not cached. So if you make any changes in developer mode, it'll automatically be seen. If you make a change in default mode, you have to clear the cache, then it'll automatically generate the file for you without having to run static content deploy.
Which cache do you have to clear? Just all of it?
So I think it's just full page cache.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and see, and then in that case, that you're supposing you have full page cache turned on.
Yeah. But
Because
it's automatically enabled in default mode supposedly. And I don't spend a lot of time in default mode. I've just kind of done some research because I feel like it's kind of like a knowledge gap for a lot of devs, just because we don't
Right.
really like mess around in that mode. I don't know many. I mean, I've seen really bad setups where people don't even use default mode and they're in like developer mode in production, but I've never seen anybody
Well,
just leave it in default mode.
that's the thing though, like you could have like if you do this deployment mode show, you notice this little message here,
Yeah.
current application mode developer, note environment variables might override this.
Yeah.
So like I could have this set, right? Like the flag for my mode could be developer, but then I could go into, is it env, right? App
Etsy env.
Etsy env,
Mm-hmm.
and I could set it to production in here. So it would say default on the command line, but be in production mode because of this file.
Yep.
Also, this is where usually like on my local, I set like FPC, full page cache for you non-cool friend zero, and then I'll set layout 0. That way, and this again, like even if let's say default mode has some default cache enabled or disabled, this would override it.
Yeah.
And then even on top of this, there's another level, which is the database. So if you go into, let's say, for instance, let's say I set my my front end name right here, and I say admin/Steve, right?
Yep.
If I go into the admin and I go to front end name in the Magento admin, I can override this. So it'll say this here and it'll say that there. And so there's this hierarchy also.
Exactly. The other thing to note is some features are only available to you in developer mode, like turning on profiling and being able to turn on or off certain caches from the admin. That's only available in developer mode. I think merging or bundling CSS, you have to be like if you want to be able to do that from the admin, I believe you have to be in developer mode along with some other stuff. Oh, I think something that I used to try to use a lot when I first started was template hints.
Are you familiar? Yeah, no, it's useful for front end developers.
Man, so I used to try to use template hints when I first started.
You almost have to.
Huh?
You almost have to sometimes as a front end developer. There's no way around it.
Yeah, the thing is though, they're like always overlapping with each other, and like you don't see the remaining part of the path, and it's just like so annoying.
it's rough.
But anyway, the point I was gonna make was I think that's only available in developer mode, but because I think, you know, Magento doesn't want you to accidentally enable that while in production, and then there's a security risk, and malicious people, bad just bad actors out there can basically have a good understanding of how your file system is, or just how your files are laid out, and potentially use that to exploit you know your app or whatever. So yeah, Magento doesn't allow you to enable that in production mode for safety reasons. At least that's what I assume. But yeah, that's
Dude,
developer mode.
this jelly bean, look, can you guys see? It is green. It's green, but it has a little brown fleck on it. Do you see that?
Is that a
What am I
hint?
supposed to think of this? What could it be?
It's like a olive. I don't know. Like a green olive.
It's not good. It tastes like a plant, like aloe vera. You never know with these things. Anyway, so I guess from my perspective, if anybody watching this video could take one thing from this, I would love it if it's just, hey, if you're in developer mode, a lot of files in this pub static directory are not real files. They're pointing to other places. If you're in production mode, when you have to put in the command static content deploy, and it will fill this static folder with a bunch of real files. And then guess what? If you're working on your theme or your module or whatever, you're not going to see the changes in your local host or in whatever host, because all of these files in static, those are real files. They're not pointing back to, the concept kind of is like in Magento, there's a development area, right? And that's your like app design or app code folders, right? And then it's like, if once you go into production mode, you're kind of generating a build, and that build lives in pub static, and your static content deploy is pushing that build, generating it based on your stuff here and whatever's in the vendor folder, and then pushing it out into the pub directory. If you can get that concept, you are now basically, if taking yourself from just being a normal web developer, and if you can get the concept of like, this is how Magento's builds are kind of working, then you're sort of like, now you're getting it as a Magento developer. Otherwise, you haven't got it yet.
Otherwise, you're not on Steve T's level yet. Okay.
I'm just no.
And Steve T is making the big bucks. Okay. So you know what you have to do to make the big bucks.
Am I right though? Like that?
No. You're right. So when I was a newbie, I was running static content deploy in developer mode, and then it would basically tell me I can't do it because it doesn't make sense, and I would just throw the -F to force it.
You're like, just do it.
Yeah. And I'm just like, man, I don't know why stuff isn't working, so I need to just run all these commands, and then
it's so clutch.
So it's like, look, one of these commands is gonna fix my problem, and then like you said, like once you kind of understand, okay, compilation, compilation does this, and then setup upgrade does this. Oh, okay, then I'm having this issue. Let me run this command, and I don't need to do the rest because I'm in this mode. And then like your workflow just becomes way more efficient versus just running every single command unnecessarily.
And a lot of times too, like if you're new to Magento 2, I don't know, maybe not a lot of times, but sometimes you might also be new to Docker or whatever. And then you don't know, you have no idea, like, am I experiencing a Docker problem, or am I just experiencing, I'm not sure what's going on with Magento 2. So you have like these two huge knowledge areas where you're just kind of poking around. So
yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to help anybody who's sort of getting into Magento 2, or even if you've been using it for a long time and you always just stuck to one mode or the other. This for me is the big thing to know is that
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, once you kind of understand certain things, then you kind of can isolate issues to particular, errors or like possibilities versus it just being like an infinite, like, I don't know, abyss of just like, is it this or that or a million other things, right? Because you just don't understand how any of the processes work. And then you,
and
yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna say, for example, like let's say we go into pub static front end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And from here, I'll inspect, and I just because I want to like give it one last shot at giving our subscribers a mental model of what's happening here. So, um, let's say website rule, right? I'll open this in a new tab. Here's my file, right? And you can see here static slash, and it puts a version number. You'll notice that version number doesn't actually exist, right? So we have static slash skip the version number. That actually I think happens here in HT access or
And
whatever.
the version number is for caching purposes to know, which
Right.
version of files need to be served and which version is expired, etc.
Exactly, because what you could do, the reason they stick this in there, I believe, at least one of the reasons, is you could set a permanent uh, cache header on a file like this, right? And that's kind of what you want to do. You want to say, hey, for however long this website exists, just keep loading this version of the file. That way, as the browser goes through the pages, it's not trying to reload that page, right? Even if you come back weeks later, it still wants to use this one. And then you get into a problem where, hey, what if you want to change that? It's never going to load the new one. So you have to change something in the URL. And that's where we get a cache busting like version number, right? I think
Yeah.
that's the story I've heard. My forefathers foretold that. Um, anyway, so that's not actually there. It's kind of just generated by PHP and the HTX file. Or
While we're on that, right? I just want
Mhm.
to point out that the paths in the pub directory, the pub static front end directory, don't exactly match the paths in the pub the app design vendor uh theme directory, right? Because Magento has these conventions of where a JavaScript file is gonna, like, what a specific path means, right? It'll truncate a lot of like unnecessary information, and you're just supposed to know based off of the Magento
like
docs, right?
the web folder or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It'll cut out a few directories, and you just kind of like have to reference the Magento docs or know by head, like, oh, okay, this path actually means this path in app design, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. And we should do an episode on that. I love the way you're thinking because that is another thing that is kind of like that takes you from sort of maybe not being a noob, but just like it really kind of eliminates some of the frustration of like, where do I find the stuff I'm trying to find and not having to always dig so deeply. But let's continue with this example. So we go front end, pub front end, and then Magento, Luma, and you see here's an ENUS folder, which is just for the location, and then Magento customer. There it is, Magento customer, JS invalidation. There it is. And we're going to get to this file website rule. And you see here, since I'm in developer mode, this is not an actual file, right? It's just pointing to somewhere else. So if I open it, I'm opening a symlink, right? And really what we want to open, let's see, let me do this. There we go. Now I'm there. ls-la will tell us where it actually points, which is into the vendor directory, right? So here's where we want to actually go. And this, for instance, you would never actually do this, but just in case you did want to actually edit this file and put like Steve here. Oh, see, it's even telling me, are you sure you want to edit this file? And I'll say yes. I'm a Magentleman. I know what I'm doing. And I'll just say, hi, Steve. Right. Now I'll save this. And there it is. So you wouldn't edit a file. And in this case, like the vendor directory, really normally you would have it in your app code directory. So you would.
And if you wanted to edit or override that file, it would, be in your app design, I guess. Or is that
Right.
a PHP file? No.
It's JS.
What am I talking about? A JS file. You can't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And so like getting into how to exactly override this.
Yeah.
We'll get into that, but I just want to drive home the concept of like, look, I saw it in the network inspector where it lives. So I pulled that up, but what I actually pulled up was just pointer to somewhere else in the code base.
Yep.
And if I edit over there, then it will actually update what I'm trying to update.
Yep.
Now, the other part of this, right, is that, well, obviously you should never actually edit core. So doing stuff in the vendor directory, like don't do that. But if you've been used to doing this, right, you're doing this, and then you're Googling, right, and you're on Stack Overflow, and they're like, oh, you know what you got to do to solve whatever thing you've Googled, switch to production mode, and then do this and that, and then do static content deploy, and you'll be all good. And you do that, right? And now, guess what? Your static directory is full of real files. So even if you switch back to production mode, you're still going to have a bunch of real files in here, which means if you're editing the ones like I just showed you to say, hi, Steve, right here, it won't do anything. You have to delete them all out of there and then do a refresh, like just refresh the page, and Magento will regenerate all the symlinks because you're now back in production mode.
Developer mode.
Ah, yes, that's right. Yep. So yeah, I think that's my sermon on deployment modes. And you actually had some really good points too. I'm really glad that we talked about this one.
Yeah. Honestly, I was like, I don't know if we'll have a lot to cover here, but somehow we found a way, as usual, to dig into like itty bitty little details, and make sure we convey the right information to our audience. So yeah, I think
we could go way deeper into this too. Like eventually, a couple years down the road, we'll know stuff. We'll look back on this episode and be like, "Oh man, we could have said so much more." But just as kind of like where I'm at with it, and it sounds like where you're at. If we could share that information, I'm glad to be able to do that.
Exactly. I mean, you covered like a lot of this from a front end perspective, which was pretty helpful for me because some of this stuff I don't deal with every day. I just kind of like have a an idea, or like, okay, I haven't done this in a while, but I have an idea of it. I can just Google or reference the docs. So it hasn't just been helpful for the audience, but helpful for me. Maybe one of these days I'll finally like install Gulp, or what was the other one?
Well, Grunt is the one that comes with default
yeah.
Magento, but I recommend the Gulp. There's a Gulp solution out there that's a replacement for the Grunt that comes with Magento.
Yeah,
it's quite a bit faster and just better, but you could use Grunt. I mean, basically all you do, maybe we should do a different episode on that. Yeah, why don't we'll plan that one for next time and just do kind of a build tools front end intro.
Yeah, honestly, I have a colleague that's very interested in that. So, um, if we could do that, I'll definitely send a video his way.
Well, you could obviously also watch the presentation I did for Charlotte Magento that has
Magento to
all of that.
Charlotte.
Magento 2 Charlotte, it's all in there.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I couldn't remember how much detail you went
Super
into.
deep, super deep.
You went super deep. Okay, so I'm gonna try to dig up that video.
Dig it,
I know it has like millions and millions of views by now.
dude. That one is legit. All right,
But
Steve Bezos.
okay,
It's
good
been a great
one.
episode, man. It's good to see you. Happy Easter, everybody.
Likewise.
Take a drink of your jelly beans.
Thanks for joining. Like, subscribe, and share. As always, we
Hit the
love and
bell.
appreciate you. Someone says hit the bell as well. Someone
Hit the
says
bell
that.
as well.
Yeah. that one's pretty swell.
I can tell.
But
Peace.
bye-bye.